I used to think relationships ended with explosions, doors slamming, screaming matches, cheating, something obvious, not silence, not a girl slowly slipping away while still laying right beside you every night. If you asked me back then, I would have said we were solid, not social media perfect, not one of those fake couples constantly posting paragraphs and matching outfits like they're trying to convince the world they're in love. We were just good, real, the kind of relationship where comfort came naturally. She knew how I took my coffee. I knew she hated being cold after showers, so I'd throw her towel in the dryer before she got out sometimes. Little things. That was us. I still remember the first night I realized I loved her. We were sitting in her car outside some random shawarma place at like 1 a.m. Rain hitting the windshield, music low in the background. She was talking about something completely unimportant, some drama with a friend at university. And I remember not even listening properly because I was too busy staring at her smile. Not in a lustful way, not even romantic in the dramatic movie sense. I just remember thinking, I could do this forever. That's what love actually feels like, I think. Not fireworks, peace. And for a long time, we had that. She'd wait for me after the gym just to sit in the car together for 10 minutes before I went home. She'd steal my hoodies and pretend they weren't mine, even though they were 3 sizes too big on her. She used to randomly kiss me mid-conversation, like she physically couldn't contain how much she loved me. I never had to question whether she wanted me. That certainty changes a man. People don't talk about that enough. When a guy feels genuinely loved, he becomes softer without even realizing it. I stopped trying to look cool around her, stopped pretending I didn't care about things, stopped acting emotionally invincible. With her, I could just exist. That's why the change scared me so much. Because at first, it barely looked like a change. It started with videos, TikToks mostly, then podcasts, then those Instagram reels with captions like, "Modern women are waking up. Stop centering men in your life. A relationship should never benefit a man more than a woman." Again, none of that bothered me at first. Honestly, some of it made sense. There are controlling men out there. Toxic relationships exist. Women should have boundaries. Women should feel independent. I agreed with all of it. And I wanted her to feel empowered. So whenever she brought those topics up, I listened. I'd say stuff like, "Yeah, I get that." Or, "That's fair, honestly." Because I wasn't threatened by it. At least not yet. But slowly, those videos stopped being entertainment to her. They became lenses. And suddenly, every interaction between us got filtered through this weird gender war perspective. It was subtle in the beginning. Like if I asked her to spend more time with me, she'd joke, "You're too attached." But it didn't feel playful anymore. Then any time I expressed frustration, she'd hit me with therapy language she learned online. "You're relying on me for emotional regulation." Or, "You need to learn how to self-soothe." Bro, I was literally just saying I missed her. That's what messed with my head the most. Normal relationship needs started getting framed like flaws. If I wanted reassurance, suddenly I lacked emotional independence. If I wanted closeness, I was needy. If I wanted intimacy, then apparently that was proof men only think physically. And after hearing that enough times, you start questioning yourself. I genuinely sat there some nights wondering if I was secretly a bad boyfriend. Because when someone constantly intellectualizes your feelings, you begin apologizing for having them at all. But even then, we were still okay. At least I thought we were. We still went on dates, still laughed, still watched movies together. The distance wasn't fully there yet. Then one night, everything shifted. We were in bed. I remember, because she was laying on her stomach, scrolling on her phone while I was half asleep next to her. The room was dark except for the light from her screen. I touched her waist gently and kissed her shoulder. Nothing aggressive, nothing pushy, just affection. And she moved my hand away, not harshly, just cold. Then she sighed and said, "I think I want to take a break from intimacy for a while." I sat there confused. "What do you mean?" "I don't know. I just feel like women are conditioned to give men access to their bodies all the time in relationships. I want to reconnect with myself." At first, I didn't even know how to respond. Because what do you say to that without sounding selfish? So I swallowed whatever I was feeling and nodded. "Okay." She smiled like she was relieved I understood. And that should have been the moment I spoke honestly. Not angrily, not demanding anything, but honestly. I should have said, "Hey, I respect your boundaries, but intimacy matters to me emotionally too. I don't want us becoming disconnected." Instead, I tried to be the good guy, supportive, understanding, mature. And for the first couple weeks, I convinced myself it was fine. I told myself relationships aren't only physical, which is true. But intimacy isn't just sex either. People who reduce it to men wanting bodies completely miss the point. I missed touching her casually without feeling like I was crossing a line. I missed kissing her naturally instead of wondering if she'd pull away. I missed feeling desired. That last part is important because nobody talks about how badly rejection messes with you when it comes from the person you love most, especially repeated rejection. At first, you tell yourself not to take it personally. Then, after a while, it becomes impossible not to. Every declined kiss starts sounding like you're unwanted. Every turned shoulder in bed becomes you're annoying. Every excuse chips away at your confidence. And the crazy thing, she genuinely didn't understand why I was hurting. That's what made it lonelier. One night, we were eating in my car, and I finally brought it up carefully. "I feel kinda distant from you lately." She immediately got defensive. "So, because we're not having sex, you think the relationship is bad?" I remember just staring at her because that wasn't what I said at all. "I didn't say that." "Then what are you saying?" "I'm saying I miss us." Silence. Then she rolled her eyes slightly and looked out the window. "I think men just place too much importance on physical stuff." That sentence stayed in my head for weeks because it reduced everything I was feeling into some shallow stereotype. Like I was just another horny guy incapable of emotional depth. Meanwhile, I was literally sitting there, begging emotionally for connection. After that conversation, something inside me started shutting down. Not intentionally, like survival instinct. I stopped reaching for her as much because getting rejected repeatedly became exhausting. I stopped complimenting her constantly because half the time she'd respond with jokes like, "Wow, objectifying me again." Even if she was kidding, eventually those jokes stop feeling funny. You start walking on eggshells around your own affection. And bro, that changes a relationship fast. People underestimate how much love lives inside small moments. The random touches, the forehead kisses, The hand resting on your thigh during a drive, the spontaneous hugs from behind. When those disappear, the relationship starts feeling corporate, like two co-workers managing emotions. I remember one specific night so clearly. We were watching a movie at her apartment. Before, she used to curl into me automatically, feet on my lap, head on my chest. That night, she sat on the opposite side of the couch, wrapped in a blanket, scrolling TikTok through half the movie. At one point, I glanced over and saw one of those podcast clips playing. Some girl saying, "Women need to stop performing for men in relationships." And I just sat there thinking, when did loving me become performing? When did caring for each other become oppression? And the worst part is, I know people hearing this would instantly assume I'm just mad about not getting sex. That's the frustrating part. Because if it were only physical, I probably could have dealt with it easier. It was the emotional rejection attached to it. The feeling that every natural desire for closeness was being analyzed politically instead of lovingly. Suddenly, I wasn't her boyfriend anymore. I was a man, a category, a statistic, an oppressor she needed boundaries from. And once someone starts viewing you through ideology instead of individuality, intimacy dies. Not just physical intimacy, emotional intimacy too. I became hyper-aware of everything. If I paid for dinner, she'd mention financial independence. If I tried helping her too much, she'd say she didn't need saving. If I got protective, she'd call it possessive masculinity jokingly. Again, maybe she didn't mean harm, but intent doesn't erase impact. 1,000 tiny comments can slowly poison how safe someone feels around you. And I stopped feeling safe emotionally. I couldn't express vulnerability without it becoming psychoanalyzed. Couldn't miss her without seeming dependent. Couldn't desire her without feeling predatory. So eventually, I just stopped expressing things. That's the stage people never notice. When a man goes quiet emotionally, the relationship is usually already bleeding out internally. One day, she actually asked me, "Why do you seem different lately?" And I almost laughed. Because how do you explain to someone that they slowly taught you your love was inconvenient? How do you explain that constant emotional invalidation makes you disappear piece by piece? Instead, I just shrugged. Tired, I guess. Truth was, I was grieving the relationship while still inside it. That's a horrible feeling. Watching someone physically remain while emotionally transforming into a stranger. I kept thinking about old versions of her. The girl who used to grab my face and kiss me mid-sentence. The girl who once drove 30 minutes just because I said I had a bad day. The girl who used to whisper, "I love you," like she couldn't hold it in. Where did she go? I blamed myself for months. Maybe I got too comfortable. Maybe I stopped dating her properly. Maybe I became emotionally unattractive somehow. And I tried fixing things. I planned dates, bought flowers randomly, started communicating more carefully. Nothing worked, because the issue wasn't behavior anymore. It was perception. She genuinely started seeing relationships as something women survive, instead of something two people build together. And once that mindset fully settles in, every loving act gets interpreted suspiciously. Then came the conversation that finally broke me. We were arguing quietly in her kitchen. Not yelling. Honestly, that almost made it sadder. I told her, "I feel like you resent me for being a man sometimes." She instantly got offended. "I never said that. You don't have to say it directly. That's ridiculous. No, I said quietly. You treat every need I have like it's some manipulation tactic. She crossed her arms. You're proving my point right now. What point? That men always center themselves. That sentence hit me harder than she realized, because I spent the entire relationship centering us, and somehow I still became the villain in her narrative. I remember looking at her and feeling this weird emotional exhaustion wash over me. Not anger, just sadness, deep sadness. Because I realized she no longer saw me clearly. She saw every bad experience women online talked about, projected onto me. And maybe some of those creators helped women escape toxic relationships. Good. But somewhere along the way, nuance disappeared. Suddenly, vulnerability in men became weakness. Need became entitlement. Desire became objectification. Commitment became control. Everything beautiful about connection got reframed into power dynamics. And our relationship couldn't survive that. After that fight, we barely touched for days. Same bed, different worlds. One night, I woke up around 3 a.m. and looked over at her sleeping. And for the first time since meeting her, I felt alone beside her. That's terrifying, because loneliness while single is manageable. Loneliness next to the person you love, that destroys you differently. I started staying longer at the gym just to avoid going home immediately. Started listening to music during drives instead of calling her. Started imagining life without her accidentally. That's when you know it's ending. Not when you stop loving someone, when you stop feeling emotionally safe with them. Eventually, she noticed my distance. Of course she did. People always notice withdrawal after ignoring pain. One evening, she asked, "Are you losing feelings?" I looked at her for a long time before answering. And honestly, part of me wanted to lie, wanted to say no and keep fighting. But another part of me was exhausted from begging silently to be loved normally again. So I said, "I think I'm losing hope." She looked hurt, and I hated that, because despite everything, I still loved her deeply. But love without mutual understanding turns painful fast. She started crying, saying I was giving up too easily, saying relationships evolve, saying intimacy shouldn't define connection. And again, she missed the point entirely. I would have survived no sex for months if I still felt emotionally wanted. But I didn't. I felt tolerated. There's a huge difference. I told her quietly, "You stopped treating me like your partner and started treating me like a representative for every man who's ever hurt women." Silence, then tears, then defensiveness again. And I realized something heartbreaking in that moment. Neither of us were fully wrong. She genuinely wanted autonomy and identity outside relationships. I respected that. But somewhere along the way, she learned independence meant emotional detachment, and I needed warmth to feel loved. Neither of those things are evil. They were just incompatible once taken to extremes. We lasted another month after that conversation. Barely. At that point, we were ghosts reenacting memories. Then one afternoon, she came over to my place and sat at the edge of my bed quietly. No anger, no drama. And somehow, that made it worse. She looked at me and said, "I don't think we make each other happy anymore." I knew she was right. Still felt like getting stabbed. I nodded slowly. Neither of us cried immediately. That's how dead things already were. The breakup itself only lasted maybe 15 minutes. Years of memories reduced to calm voices and exhausted eyes. When she left, she hugged me at the door, and for 1 second, one tiny second, It felt like the old her again. Warm, familiar, safe. Then she let go. And that was it. After she left, I sat in silence for hours. No music, no TV, just silence. Thinking about how weird modern relationships have become. How people online convince each other intimacy is weakness. Dependency is toxic. Needing people is embarrassing. But humans are supposed to need each other. That's the whole point. Love isn't a battlefield where someone wins power. It's supposed to be two people choosing vulnerability together. And maybe she'll realize that someday. Maybe I will too, in different ways. I don't hate her. I really don't. I think she got scared of losing herself inside love. And in trying so hard to protect herself, she slowly pushed away the person who genuinely adored her. Sometimes I still think about her randomly when certain songs play, when I drive past places we used to go, when I see girls stealing hoodies from their boyfriends in public. And every now and then, I wonder if she ever looks back and misses who we used to be before everything became ideological, before affection needed disclaimers, before intimacy became political, before love started feeling like a negotiation instead of a home. Because I do. I miss that version of us all the time.